Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Jack Reynolds. I'll be helping to moderate. I'm also here to introduce Drew McEleney, Manager of Performance Management at Dealer.com. Today, Drew will be sharing how branding your dealership's digital retailing experience can yield big dividends for your business. A few housekeeping items before we get started. All attendees have been muted, but if you do have questions throughout the webinar session, please put them in the go-to console on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll take 10 to 15 minutes at the end for questions. We'll also send a recording of this presentation after the webinar. Drew, go ahead and take it away.
Great, thank you, Jack. I'm going to advance to my first slide. First of all, just want to say welcome everyone to today's webinar. Really excited to be with you, spend the next hour or so with you. I know how valuable your time is, right? You're in the dealership, you're selling cars, you're answering internet leads, you're making the business go. So I'm humbled to have an hour of your time to spend with you today. My name is Drew McEleney. Just to give you a little bit of background on my time with automotive, spent 9 years on the retail side of the car business in a dealership in Eastern Iowa that had Chevrolet, Buick, GMC, and Toyota. And in that time, my time in the business, did pretty much everything on the sales side of the house, right? Sold cars, worked in the BDC for a time, was a sales manager, general sales manager, and ultimately GM of the store. So during that time, I took a little bit of a left turn, spent a year in the body shop. So I have a little bit of background in fixed ops. That's outside of the scope of what we're going to talk about today. So I won't delve too far into paint booths and things like that. But that's my background on the retail side of the business. And in 2016, I joined Cox Automotive. And at that time, I came on to the Auto Trader Kelley Blue Book listings side of our business and did that for about a year. And then since about 2018, I've really been focused on Cox Automotive's digital retailing efforts. So was a digital retailing performance manager, and now fortunately I get to lead a team of performance managers where we talk about optimizing websites and really focusing in on digital retailing experiences. So best practices, how we market it, and how we connect those, what we set up on the website and the promise of our website and the culture of the store and the processes in the store. So as you heard, hopefully everyone's in the right place, but today's meeting is on the branding and marketing of digital retailing on your website. So let's talk about today's agenda for just a moment. The first thing we're going to talk about is how branding digital retailing is a competitive advantage. So this is a competitive advantage not only against other dealers or retailers across town, across the state, or even farther, right? Our competition is only a quarter of an inch away on a monitor, or more often than ever, a smartphone. So we want to be able to differentiate ourselves. I want you all to come away from today's meeting being able to differentiate yourselves from competition that may also be leveraging digital retailing, but do our consumers really know about it, right? So we're going to talk about that a little bit today. We're also going to talk about how do we brand digital retailing on both mobile and desktop. You're going to hear me talk a lot about mobile today, right? Because mobile is a focus area more than ever. We have lots and lots of consumers that are visiting our websites and various properties throughout the internet on a mobile device rather than a desktop or a laptop device or a tablet of that nature. So on those properties, both mobile and desktop, we're going to give sort of equal airtime to those two sides. We're going to look at your homepage, right? That's the front door of your website. We want to stand tall, just like we have the physical lot in the dealership, looking great, cars cleaned up, ready to roll. We're also going to talk about the value of a custom landing page for digital retailing and get into the value there, not only in explaining the digital retailing process to your shoppers, but also the value of SEO in there as well. Search results page, I think many of you are familiar with that term. That's when someone clicks, they look at, let's say, all of the F-150s, a certain make and model on your dealership. So now they might have 10 or 15 or 20 to pick from. How do we continue that thread of branding through the search results page? And then finally to the page that is near and dearest to my heart is the vehicle deals page, right? So the VDP. Because that's where sort of the magic happens on any retailer's site, where a shopper can interact with digital retailing and ultimately convert into someone we can reach out and sell a car to. We're going to kind of conclude some things here at the end of the presentation with some ready-made assets. So we're going to give you some tools that you can use immediately, take some action as soon as today or tomorrow with the help of your performance manager, and then also some key takeaways. And then we'll leave some time for Q&A at the end of today's meeting. So thanks again for coming on the journey with me, and we're gonna have fun with this. We'll have a couple polls along the way, let you all help interact. But let's dive right in. Okay, so as I said, branding, digital retailing, it's a competitive advantage. We don't want to forget about that. We have many new franchise dealers. Certainly well over half of franchise dealers in the United States have digital retailing of one kind or another, but well under half let anybody know about it, right? In any meaningful way, that we have a process that can save time and be more convenient for that retail consumer. So we always kind of want to keep that in mind. We've done lots and lots of studies at Cox Automotive about that's what the consumer wants, is to save time and have a convenient experience. The other really awesome thing, frankly, for all of us on the call today is that when a consumer saves time, the dealer is going to save time too, right? So that's something to keep in mind as well. It's an evergreen marketing message. So I just want you all to think, just take a quick second. Who here is doing a great job already of branding digital retailing? Right? I know you can't reply here, so I'm not going to wait too terribly long. But there are probably some of you out there that have dipped your toe in this water, or maybe you're doing a great job. So maybe we only have to go a few steps here, or maybe we're sort of starting from square one. But either way, I want to share some best practices today on how we can separate you from your competition. The other really cool thing is a lot of these assets that we may create, this branding that we do with digital retailing, is really an evergreen message. It's not something you're going to need to change every month or every season like we would for a sales promotion. So that's the other benefit, is this messaging is that sort of evergreen advertising. Okay, so before we dive into the automotive side of the house, I want you to all think, especially since the pandemic started, because everything sort of took off and to the right like a hockey stick with digital retailing adoption. But think of digital retailing you've participated in that has nothing to do with the car business, especially maybe think since the pandemic started, right? Especially in the last couple of years. I have some examples here, some companies that do a really good job of it. DoorDash, Starbucks. We've got, I think it's Domino's Pizza is the other one up there. I know personally, when I'm out visiting clients, out seeing dealers, which is one of my favorite things to do, I don't walk into a Starbucks or go through the drive-through. I've already gotten online, gotten on my app. It's got my payment information. I place the order on my phone and I transact and I pick up that coffee, that roll, whatever I'm getting that day in store. So it's faster, it's more convenient for me. And that's the same concept of cars. Can you all think of maybe one that you've used for a bigger ticket item? Something more than a lunch or a cup of coffee or a pizza. I think most of you have had lunch already, so if I'm making you hungry, I apologize. But what's another business that maybe is a higher ticket item that people are using digital retailing for? Maybe you've thought about it for a second. One that comes to mind for me is Best Buy, is electronics, right? And that's certainly more expensive than a $4 or $5 cup of coffee. Another one might be Lowe's or Home Depot, right? Where maybe we're picking up a lawnmower or something more expensive in there that requires some effort there. So we find that folks want that experience with the retailer, but they want to save time. They want to have a more convenient experience. And that's also what we're trying to do here with retail automotive. Okay, so that brings us to our first poll. So I want to ask everyone in the audience, again, thank you for joining us today. But do you brand and market digital retailing on your website? 3 choices, right? Yes, no, or I don't currently have a digital retailing experience on my website. Okay, just so everyone knows, I can't see the returns in real time, but we're gonna leave it open for just a little bit here. Please, I would encourage you to answer yes, you do brand and market, no, you don't, or you don't currently have digital retailing on your website. Okay, drum roll. Okay, that's great. Frankly, this We're testing out the poll feature, so thank you so much for playing along, everyone that did. Just about 2/3 of us do have branding on our website of digital retailing. So you're ahead of the game. Remember at the beginning, we talked about how less than half of franchise dealers are really doing a good job of branding digital retailing. The folks that aren't yet, hey, you may have good reason for it. Maybe you haven't seen compelling enough reason to do it, or some of the best practices there. We're going to get to that next. We're glad you're here. And then about 13% don't have digital retailing. Actually, that might be my favorite answer, frankly, because if you're here on this meeting today and you don't have digital retailing, but you're already thinking about how you want to brand digital retailing, that's powerful, right? You're beginning a little bit with the end in mind and connecting the two sides, right? The promise your website makes, and then delivering on that promise in the store with your sales process and also the culture in the dealership. Fantastic. Okay. So now let's get into the nitty gritty a little bit here. As far as branding digital retailing on the homepage, wanted to touch base on this a little bit as well. The homepage of any website, the most important part of that homepage, that digital real estate, is above the fold. And I know maybe that dates me a little bit here. If any of you are familiar with print advertising, you think of a newspaper, right? We talk about above the fold, that visible area of the newspaper when we set it down in front of us on our desk or our kitchen table. So I want to be mindful of that space. And now, of course, we're talking about focusing on the desktop version of digital retailing, but we want to be mindful about what are we displaying in that really valuable space above the fold on our homepage. So it would be best practice, whatever we're going to call digital retailing, however we're going to label it, that we want that to appear above the fold. If it's down 3 or 4 screens and it's in a rotator and it's the 3rd or 4th or 5th option in that rotator, it's not going to get clicked on. It's not going to get looked at, and we might as well not even have it on the website at that point. So best practice. What are some things that we need to do to tick off our list here on the homepage? Well, first of all, we got to come up with a name, right? We should be doing some brainstorming. This is a great chance, I think, to have sales leadership and the marketing team and maybe even the BDC, whoever the director of your BDC, if you have one. Let's get around a whiteboard and brainstorm a little bit about what we might want to call our digital retailing experience. That's typically the hardest part, is what I've found is coming up with a name. What do we want to call this thing? In terms of actually getting some assets created, spending a little money, getting a message, we're going to talk about video and other ways we can connect with this. That stuff isn't as hard as figuring out what that name is that we want to kind of connect with and connect our consumers with. We should be thinking about speed and convenience. I mentioned this at the top of our presentation, right? That the value of digital retailing to that retail consumer is time savings and convenience. And that cool thing that happens on the other side of that coin, it just happens automatically, is that it makes you at the dealership more efficient as well in selling cars. So things like we see here, which is FastPass. We see in the top left corner. In the top right, we see easy purchase online. So those are 2 great examples of convenience and speed. It's also exclusivity. So that goes back to differentiating yourselves and separating your store from the rest of the pack. So make it your own and make it something that you can pepper into your branding, right? You could put as a tag on the end of a 15-second video spot or in other advertising. Don't forget that you can work with your dealer.com digital storefront performance manager to connect on different design inspirations, right? We have 28 different options we can use for designs. I call them blueprints. Where do we get started? How do we want to customize and separate our experience on our website from everyone else? And that's not just digital retailing. That's a much bigger topic. We're not going to get into that here today, but obviously deciding where you want to deploy those assets and how do you want that look and feel of that homepage to be configured can also blur into maybe it's time for a refresh, and let's check out some new options for designs and inspirations for that homepage. Okay, so I told you again early on here that we were going to talk about mobile. And I've got a mobile slide for each of these examples that we're going to look at here today as well. So just think in your mind, I'd like everybody to get a percentage in your mind what percent of consumers are coming through that mobile door? They're using an iPhone or a Android device to visit your website. Give everybody a second here. What percentage do you think are using mobile versus a desktop experience? It's about 70%. So I don't know if that surprises you. Some maybe feel it's higher, maybe at your store it is higher, or a little less, but it's well over half of retail consumers are coming through mobile. So you're going to hear my broken record on mobile here a little bit today too, right? So we're looking at the same examples, the same three dealers here. We've got Fast Pass on the left and Easy Purchase on the right, and it's the same idea. Now in this case, because of the space limitations that we have on a mobile device, right? These brandings of digital retailing are not above the fold because we have to have some things like phone number and some of the basics of the store at the very, very top of the page, right? What I will say is that we've tested this with these three sites and many others, that you don't have to scroll up very far on your phone to get to that messaging about digital retailing and those calls to action. One thing that I do want to mention, I didn't mention on the last screen, but it absolutely would be best practice to have those linked because they have to link somewhere, right? So if someone clicks on that tile that says Summit Auto Fast Pass, or they click on Easy Purchase Online, it has to go somewhere. We're going to talk next about custom landing pages. So that would be best practice. That is what I recommend, is that we have those go to a landing page that better explains digital retailing. Alternatively, we could have that go right to inventory. Again, I'm a little bit torn because we do want to get shoppers down that purchase path. We want to get them in front of inventory. We want to convert them and sell them a car, right? That's the purpose of having this website in the first place. But that's where I would recommend is having these links, whether it's desktop or mobile, that it would go to that custom landing page. So that's what we're going to talk about next. Okay. So custom landing pages, I just used a couple examples here. We carried over that Easy Purchase Online example, and this is desktop again. So in this case, one of the things I love first and foremost about the Easy Purchase Online example here is that you see there's an embedded video. So I believe in this case, it's either the general sales manager or the general manager of the store, someone who's prominent at the dealership, someone who's prominent in the community, should be the person that records the video. I would very much encourage you for this page, for this use, to record. It can't be too long, right? We don't want a 4, 5, 6, 7 minute video. Nobody will watch the whole thing, but maybe 60 to 90 seconds. We have a video that explains what is Easy Purchase Online, what's in it for the shopper. Let's just talk about it plain and easy. This will save you time. It's more efficient, it's more convenient. All of the benefits of using digital retailing on your website, what's in it for the shopper, and lay it out in that interactive video. And of course, we can use that video in many other places, right? We could use it on social media. We can use it on a blog. We can use it in different places as well. The other thing I'll mention is if we look a little bit farther down that page, it's sort of the breaking out step 1, step 2, step 3, pick your car, personalize your payment. It's a little bit hard to see on that left example, but you can see it a little more clearly on the one on the right, where we actually have buttons that say new inventory, used inventory, certified inventory. Remember that I talked about it's acceptable to link from the homepage right into inventory, but I think it makes more sense. It is best practice to go in and explain what digital retailing is, but then let's not wait there too long. Let's re-engage that shopper back into your inventory, because ultimately that's where we want them to go. So now let's take a look at custom landing page on mobile. Who remembers that percentage? It wasn't that long ago. Told you I was going to be a broken record on this one. 70%, right? 70% of consumers are coming to your website on mobile. So if I can get on my soapbox for a minute, whether it's digital retailing or any other change you're making with your website, connect with your dealer.com, digital storefront performance manager, and let's test both out, right? It looks great on desktop. That's usually how we have our performance reviews and our meetings. Let's just check it on mobile. Let's make sure everything lines up there, because that's where most of the eyeballs are on your website. So let's talk about custom landing pages for mobile, right? On the left, center, and right, we've got those examples again. We've got buttons that are going to link right to inventory. We've got this Easy Purchase Online. It's a little easier to see here that they have the shop new and shop used links. And then on the far right, one of my favorite examples, we're going to talk a little more about it, as we get to the VDP is name your payment. So that's a store in Alabama has used the term name your payment. And I really like the way that they do step 1, step 2, step 3. They also have a custom video that explains their digital retailing in a little more depth. Okay, so we've arrived at that time for poll number 2. If you participated last time, please do that again for us. If not, jump in, the water's warm. How valuable are digital retailing leads to your business? Not valuable at all. The most valuable we receive is number 5. Just give us a feel for where you think these leads fall in comparison to other internet leads you receive. Okay, we'll leave that poll open for just another minute and collect a few more responses. Okay, we've got the results, and this is very encouraging. So you guys have all spoken. You guys and gals have all spoken here. I really appreciate it. About 2% said not valuable at all. I appreciate the feedback. I totally understand that. And then everyone else really was a 3, a 4, or a 5. So kind of middle of the road. A little bit better than maybe the average lead, or number 5 was the biggest reply that we got here, which is DR leads are the most valuable leads we receive. And you know, it's not just my opinion here. We at Cox Automotive love to do surveys. We do surveys on surveys on surveys. And we've done a lot of surveys, and not only surveys, but actually analyzing data, transaction data from DR leads versus other internet sources. And the data backs up number 4 or number 5. Really, it backs up number 5, that these are the most valuable type of leads that dealers receive as far as internet leads go. And how are we ascribing value to that? They close at a higher rate than the average internet lead, and they result in higher gross profit. And that second one, and that's talking both front and back gross, right? That second part of the DR equation, I think that surprises a lot of folks. It surprises a lot of F&I managers. For all my F&I managers out there, love you all. I love you men and women out there that are doing that, because what we're doing with digital retailing is we're allowing shoppers to have sort of that illusion of control, right? To get to the website, to personalize a payment. And in the case of Accelerate My Deal, they can add on some extras, right? Like some finance and insurance products, like gap insurance or a vehicle service contract, et cetera. So we're conditioning or preconditioning those shoppers to want those things, and to better than want them, to budget for some of those items when they do ultimately transact in the store. So it's the old internet race to the bottom. That is not the case with digital retailing leads, right? They close at a higher rate and they're more profitable. So that's ultimately what we want to do, is sell cars and make money. Okay. So next we're going to talk about the search results page, or the SRP. So the SRP, again, I would assume many on this call are familiar with the term, but that's when we pick out typically a make and a model, or maybe a category. I want to see all your convertibles. I want to see all your sedans. I want to see all your vans. And they appear in a list or a grid view, depending on how you want to configure it on your website. And we're going to see, maybe 10 or 15 or 20 per page. That can be customized as well. But this is probably the area, I don't want to say probably, I think it is the area when we get into branding that gets overlooked the most by dealers. And what we're trying to do here is, we've already, just think about sort of that click path that customer had through your website as they're discovering things. They got to your homepage. They said, I am interested in that fast pass. I want to see what this easy purchase is all about. So they click on that, maybe they get through, they read a little bit on the that landing page, and then they get into the search results page. So at this point, this page isn't here to do a lot of heavy lifting, okay? It's not here to do to continue necessarily the research phase. But in this case, you can see on the left, we have Fast Pass, and on the right, we have Accelerator is how that dealer decided to label this. And on every single car, there's a little badge, a little call to action that has that branding. And we're just continuing that thread of digital retailing through the site. We want to keep doing that as a best practice. Now, some dealers will put a banner atop the search results page. We don't want it to be too tall, right? We don't want to force that inventory down the page because we're ultimately here to get someone to click in on a particular vehicle and then send a lead in. Another thing that can be done with the dealer.com website and Accelerate My Deal, we can filter. We can do what's called the search facet here, right? So we could have, for example, loan and lease in that left navigation, and we could let someone search for, I want to see all the trucks I could buy for $500 to $600, or I want to see all the sedans I could lease for $400 to $600, and it'll return that based on our default settings of digital retailing. So again, don't want to get too far away of the focus of branding, but those would all be best practices to really leverage what we're doing with digital retailing into your website. So now let's talk for a minute about the mobile side, right? I promised you we were going to keep talking mobile. What's that percentage? You all have it on the tip of your tongue. You're probably groaning at this point, but it's 70%, right? 70% of consumers are coming to the website through that mobile door. So we just, the point is that we just got to be sure that we've got that dialed in. We've got it matched up. So we can see in this case, yeah, the formatting's a little bit different, right? The way that the photo of the vehicle and the listing are put together are a little bit different, but we're branding each of those areas with that, in this case, Fast Pass or Accelerator. Okay, so now we need to talk about, I said at the top of the meeting, my favorite page on the entire website is the vehicles deals page, or the vehicle deals page. Some people call it the vehicle details page. I would suggest, or I really have a strong feeling that is, if you have digital retailing, we should call it the vehicle deals page, right? This is where someone comes to really start their car deal. Maybe before they've picked up the phone or walked into your showroom, they want to kind of know what they can budget for, what they can expect. Most people aren't writing a check for a $50,000 car. They're buying a $423 payment or a $516 payment, right? So that branding, we want to continue through this process. On the left side, we can see that example with FastPass again. So they've branded it right over the digital retailing experience. That's Accelerate My Deal on a desktop version of a VDP, which is great. And they're doing the same thing on the right side. Now on the right side, I have to tell you just a little background on this one. So at Cooper Chevrolet, they call the tool Name Your Payment. That's what their digital retailing branding is all about. And a couple years ago, they did a really good job of sort of going in 10 fingers, 10 toes, branding digital retailing, and to the point where the general manager, who if you can see in that screen, is focused in there, recorded a video and discussed about Name Your Payment. And they put it on some traditional advertising. They put it on table tents. They had it all over the dealership. They even had pins and hats the salespeople were wearing, ask me about Name Your Payment. And he became a little bit of a local celebrity, if you can believe it. So based on what he was doing on the website and what their advertising was doing, he couldn't go out to dinner without somebody stopping and tapping him on the shoulder and saying, hey, are you that Name Your Payment guy? So think about the effort and energy. They recorded a video. They decided they were going to do this. They got everybody together. They brainstormed what they were going to call it and got the culture of the store involved, right? So they really deliver on the promise of their branding on the website. So I just think that's such a cool example because it didn't cost a ton of dollars to come up with that, but they decided that was going to be kind of their message, and that stood the test of time. They came up with this before the pandemic ever started, and they've been marketing it successfully ever since. Okay, one last time. I think this is the last time I'm going to ask you for the percentage, everybody. What percentage is coming through the mobile door? 70%, right? So again, I'll be that broken record one more time here. Notice that on the left and right-hand side, those two images look a little bit different than what we saw on the last screen. Well, that's due to the limitation, right, of what an iPhone or an Android or a mobile device, the formatting of those devices have to be a little bit different. But I want to remind you all that the way that Accelerate My Deal works is everything a shopper can do on the desktop, they can do on mobile. It's just a little bit, the formatting is just a little bit different here. So we can see on the left and right, we've got that branding right over the digital retailing experience. And then we've got that video from Cooper Chevrolet. Now, one thing I didn't mention on the last slide, but I will call out here is that it's a little bit of a double-edged sword putting that video onto the VDP because it can affect load times, right? So we just want to be sure we're testing that out, that the juice is worth the squeeze. Certainly they've found that it's worth having that video embedded onto each VDP on their website, and they've run with it. But I would just make sure we're asking our performance manager about that when we have our monthly meetings as well. Okay, we've come to poll number 3. This is the last poll of today's presentation, and we'll have time for some Q&A. But are you incorporating your digital retailing branding, those of you that are doing it, into your DR lead follow-up? So yes or no, I don't brand digital retailing, or I don't currently have a digital retailing experience on my website. We'll go ahead and open that poll and chat about it in just a moment. So are we incorporating the DR branding into the DR lead follow-up? Great news, we got a DR lead. We're replying. Are we mentioning any of the branding that we're doing on site in that reply? Okay, we've got our answer here. I see this as a great area of opportunity. We have over half. First of all, I got to give credit where credit is due, that over half are incorporating into their follow-up that DR branding, right? So that's great. Frankly, that number's higher than I thought it was going to be. So kudos to those of you that are doing that today. About 10% said no. About 20% don't currently brand digital retailing, and about 21% don't have a DR experience live on the website, right? So again, the water is very warm. That last category, you're after a special place in my heart because you're thinking about this as you're deciding what do you want to do with digital retailing. You're already sort of beginning with the end in mind a little bit. But I think that is for those 49% that didn't say yes here, this is a real area of opportunity, and we need to think of it that way. Because it goes back to that whole idea of connecting the promise that we're making on the website, that DR branding, that DR messaging, that marketing. This is where the marketing piece comes in, right? The branding and putting it up there and kind of set it and forget it is one thing, but we want to be making it just dead obvious to a shopper that you have digital retailing, what's in it for them, that they're going to save time, it's going to be convenient. And we just want to propagate that message. So we shouldn't probably stop, not probably, we shouldn't stop within the 4 walls of your website, whether that's on a mobile device or that's on a desktop. We should follow that thread through. So when we're replying to a shopper that started a digital retailing deal, think of how much more time they've spent on your website. Think about how much more effort they've put into getting in touch with you, structuring that deal, figuring out the cash down, their credit tier, maybe a trade that they've added in there, the term, whether it's finance or lease. They've already told you how they want to buy a car. We should really be treating that shopper. And we're not going to get into the weeds today completely on the process in store, but we should absolutely be prepared to deliver on the promise of the website. And that starts with that first email, that first phone call to a digital retailing shopper should probably look a little different, should sound a little different than we would send to maybe a Get Today's Price or a Cars.com lead or an Auto Trader lead or a KBB lead or a TrueCar lead. Those are a little bit, yeah, we got the car, when can you come in? We're asking some follow-up questions, but we have this rich source of information. Let's be sure we're really hammering home to that shopper the promise of what we're doing on the website. If we've got DR up and we're branding it, how easy is it to customize that message and carry that message through. There's not much that has to be done in your CRM. Most modern CRMs are going to allow for that these days. So thank you for participating in that poll. Oops. Okay. So I wanted to hold this off till the end because the best practice is absolutely coming up with your own name, getting buy-in in the dealership, helping, really modify the culture of your dealership to this digital retailing message so you can really deliver on DR. But one thing that we've done at Cox Automotive is our content and creative team and our managed services team have come up with what we call ready-made assets, or I call them ready-made assets. So it's this type of messaging, customize your deal, and you see different areas here. That one in the top left is actually for the homepage. The one on the right is mobile, and the one on the bottom left would be a banner example for like the top of a search results page. So we've created these, for all of the major OEMs that we work with through dealer.com, through Cox Automotive. So there's something like 28 or 30 or 32 sets of images that are all compliant with your manufacturer, the right color palette, the right font, the whole deal, right? It's been vetted. It took many months, frankly, to put all of that together. So this is where I said, what can we do right now? What can we do today, right? So what we can do is we can put these assets into play. You just need to talk to your dealer.com storefront performance manager. Sorry about that, stumbled over that a little bit, and say, let's get some of those ready-made assets up. And the idea is not to set it and forget it. The idea is not to turn these on and say, well, it's better than not doing any branding, because it absolutely is better than doing branding. But guess what? There's a lot of dealers that we work with that are doing at least above the not branding and using these assets. But it's a great placeholder while we figure out what we want to call it, get those assets put together and deliver them. So maybe we have a meeting today and we say, hey, by the time we meet in July, we're going to have all this stuff ready to go. Put up the ready-made assets. Let's have those placeholders in place. And then in 2 months, we're going to put the real deal up and live. That would be the recommendation here as a best practice. Okay, so we're bringing it home here. I want to talk about a few key takeaways, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. So I want to be sure you all pick a name that connotes speed and or convenience. That would be the best practice. You just, trying to get that message in just a few words across to that retail consumer. What is this thing and why should I care about it? Saving time is always a good place to start, because that we find is the best reason that people want to do digital retailing in any realm. Match your culture in the dealership to the DR branding. So match your culture to the DR branding of the dealership, right? If we're not friendly, if we're still kind of doing the 12 steps to the sale, if it takes 4 hours to buy a car from you today, why? Does it have to be that way? I understand there are exceptions to every rule. We have somebody that is credit challenged. We have to do a locate. We have to do an order out, et cetera, et cetera. There are things that can get in our way there, but why can't we sell a car in an hour or 45 minutes or an hour and 15 if we had all this information up front, right? There's no reason we can't, but we have to have the culture match what we're selling on our website. Work with your performance manager and content and creative to build out assets. So many of you have some premium services with us. Rely on them. They're going to be able to build some custom pages for you, some custom assets. So like I said, you do the hard part, come up with what we want to call this thing, and let Cox Automotive help you out with the rest if you're signed up for that service. Place the assets on your website. Don't forget about mobile. I put mobile first because how many percent? 70%, right? 70% of people are coming through that mobile door. So we got to make sure it looks great on both sides. And then leverage the branding beyond your website. If you get called out as the person, aren't you that name your payment person? You've won, right? I think the folks at Cooper Chevrolet, they've proven with digital retailing that they've won doing this because of their commitment there. So really appreciate your time today. And I'm looking forward to taking some questions here in just a minute.
All right, thanks, Drew. Before we get into questions, I want to remind everyone, in case you joined late, you can enter your questions in the GoToWebinar console on the right-hand side of your screen. We've had a few come in already, so let's dive into those. First one here for you, Drew. What is a good way to measure the impact of branding over time to make sure this effort is working?
That's a really good question, because there's got to be metrics, right? We need to be able to see progress and how we go. So to me, there's a couple really important ways to measure the success of a digital retailing tool and to measure the success of particularly looking at the branding process, right? And to me, that would be pencils. How many people, how many consumers went into the VDP and played with the payment? They customized it. They changed their cash down. They changed their credit tier and customized a new payment. So along with that would be the number of deal starts we see. In other words, I use the term deal start, that's also known as a digital retailing lead, that land in the CRM. We know those are the highest quality. So if we're seeing more people interact with the tool and we're seeing more deal sends, then that's progress. And those are the two things that we would want to measure going forward.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Let's see the next one here. How can I get my sales team bought into DR and branding around my DR?
Boy, that's a tough one. I've ran many a sales meetings, and sometimes we're looking for topics, right? Sometimes we're trying to get folks bought into a new policy, and frankly, try not to have something be the program of the month, right? We've either probably come back from a 20 group meeting, or maybe leadership at the store came back from a 20 group and said, this is gonna be what we're gonna do, and you sort of do it for 30 days or 45 days and it falls by the wayside. So I would just be sure, you've got buy-in, right? Not only from the top down of the organization, but like anything, I would begin, with what's in it for them. That's the first thing I would probably bring up with a digital retailing conversation is, yeah, we can talk all day to our sales team about how great it is for the retail consumer and how they're going to save time and on and on and on. But it's going to make the salesperson and the F&I manager and the sales manager that much more efficient. So I think that's a good place to start is, hey, you can sell more cars in the same amount of time with the same staff, right? And they're more profitable than the average internet lead. So I think I would just sort of begin with the end in mind, and then just be sure we're matching that culture to what we're promising on the website.
Thanks. Let's see, last one here so far, and I would encourage you to ask them while you have Drew in front of you here, but we can always follow up with you all after. Sure. How can I incorporate my branding into my internet follow-up process?
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, so I know we had that poll. I love that folks are already starting to do that, and it's going to depend a little bit on which CRM you're using and kind of what your follow-up process is already today. But I think, and to be perfectly blunt, I'm not a huge fan of templates. I like using templates within CRM for our follow-up process as a starting point, right? Templates can be a great thing if they get the gist of what we're trying to communicate at a to a certain consumer at a certain point to sort of be that starting point. But then we need to customize it, and we need to really meet that shopper where they're at, particularly for a digital retailing shopper, right? So I would, in all of my templates, I would put a graphic. Let's say we decide we're going to use FastPass or we're going to use Easy Purchase. We should be shouting FastPass from the rooftops on any reply that comes out of the CRM. So we should incorporate those graphics in there. And then we should also probably have a separate template, or at least a starting point within the CRM, particularly for a DR customer. So like one thing you can do, for example, in VIN solutions, if you're a VIN CRM dealer, is you can actually go grab what we call our deal link. So let's say the car they inquired about isn't available, which happens a lot these days, given the inventory situations we're seeing, right? So maybe it's a car that's inbound, it's a sold unit, but it shows as in transit to your new inventory, let's say. Well, that car's not here, or maybe even if it is coming for stock, it won't be here for 6 weeks, but let's try to sell something that is here. So maybe we have a CPO car, maybe we have a used car that we think could kind of meet those terms. Not only could we like get back and talk about the deal, we don't immediately want to sort of make that switch, but we could say, would you also consider this gently used car that is going to be in that same budget range? We could put a link to it that actually, when they either click on it, on desktop, or they tap on it on their mobile phone, it takes that shopper back to your website and then into the digital retailing experience. So they can now see if they want that car, and they can play around with the payment terms and the deal structure on that car. So that's a really powerful tool without having to reinvent the wheel of sort of re-engaging those folks.
All right, looks like we don't have any more questions coming in, so we'll go ahead and wrap up today's webinar. Drew, thank you for an informative session. I certainly hope everybody found today helpful. As always, we appreciate your attendance and encourage you to reach out to our team if you do have additional questions. Drew, do you have any closing thoughts?
No, again, I just appreciate everything everyone does for their dealerships. Thank you for your time today. I wish you nothing but the best. I'm gonna let you get back to selling cars and working with your teams, but thank you for your time today.